I suppose we started off in goal, so lads. This is nearly impossible. I suppose the big thing for me is I was like, thinking about it, driving there this evening, that how much it has changed. And I've gone for Noel Skehan as my number one, 7 All-Stars, 9 All-Irelands. My memory of him in the 70s, Clare would have played him in 3 league finals in a row, and what a shot stopper and that. But like, so much different type of goalie than even yourself and the two now who are probably the head of the game, I suppose, would be Murph and Nicky. I suppose you'd think, in line for this year's. So it's just the position has changed so much in terms of puck outs now being absolutely. I mean, I'm in awe of the goalkeepers now, how accurate they are and how brilliant they can land the balls. And so I went for Skehan anyway. That was my tuppence. But sure, look, I could list them out up along Gerard Cunningham, right up to the lads, as I mentioned, the 2 boys before, and including yourself, Anton. The Cumminses, the Fitzgeralds, the Fitzhenrys, all the greats. But I went for Noel Skehan for my number one.
Yeah, I would echo that view, Dalo. We'll agree on one position anyway. That's a good start. But yeah, look, I was my aunt married a man from Wexford, so I was lucky. I was taken to Leinster finals in Croke Park many years, where there were just fantastic games between Wexford and Kilkenny. But Noel Skehan, I think the traits you needed as a goalie that time was your close control had to be really, really good, because the full forward line were only meant to drive you into the back of the net. Like, that was the times and the plays that you went on. And he had a savage first touch. He was very, very brave. And as you said, he had the skills that was required at the time. You didn't have to. That time you drove it as far as you could. But I thought he was an excellent shot stopper, really good touch, and a very, very accomplished goalie. And as you said, the game has changed. And in fairness, Donlogue probably had a lot to do in terms of changing how the game is. In terms of that distribution of the ball, and the way he changed as well. The Galway and All-Ireland, when they went long, when Galway were probably setting up to go short. And they changed, and I think it made a big difference in that final as well. That got him across the line. So, I think the game has changed, and Brendan probably played through both of them, where he was long as far as he could in the late 90s, to where he was trying to, by the time we got him in 2010, he was trying to find that gap outside him, especially against Waterford in 2010, the semi-final. So I think it's an incredible lineup. But to me, Noel Skehan just about gets over the line, and he was the one I picked too. So we'll leave it to the real goalie now to tell us who we should have picked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. In fairness, look, it won't happen a lot, but I'd agree with you in this one. Look, I can't say I saw a lot of him playing. I saw clips. Like when I was growing up, you kind of would have looked at goalkeepers and stuff like that. But the one thing for me, if you look across this team, and 50 years, I believe any of these players that would have played in those eras, you're talking about his touch at the time, his shot stopping, his bravery. I'm sure if he was lining out now in 2021, he would still be the best goalkeeper in 2021. You know what I mean? The ones that kind of stood out for me, look, like all of those goalkeepers I would have idolised and looked at. I got to train with Donlogue. It was actually tough for me. I'd put Donlogue next because of what he's done in hurling, the bravery he had to take on a puck out, and the very few times that he missed one, he'd go for the same one after. A lot of these players, I think if you're sitting back here in 10 or 15 years time, you might change it. And I think currently Owen Murphy, as you said, and Nicky Quaid-Dalo, like Jesus, like Murphy pulls off saves there that like I would have played against him, I would have played against both of them, and I think that at the moment, I think just Murphy, the things he does, like even against Cork this year in the All-Ireland semi-finals, were frightening. Like the save he made from Jack O'Connor going in was just absolutely off the charts. And to then, like I could sit here and talk about each one of these goalies and put up a point for all of them. They're all absolutely, top class. Their shot stopping, their bravery. Brendan Cummins pulling off 4 point blank saves against Kilkenny on a day. You could go along and I'd be drooling watching them myself. But I was saying there before the show, we kind of, I text Dalo to put me in, and I text me to put him in, and he didn't do it. So you could be guaranteed that Daly won't be in the half back line in my team anyway. But yeah, no. In fairness, it was an absolute head wreck, and it just set up the tone for this because the players are so good. But I think any man that has 7 All-Stars and 9 All-Irelands, mother of God, as a goalkeeper, it has to be acknowledging this. And for me, I'd agree with the two boys.
Go on with your full backlines there, so we'll see. We'll come up with some bit of consensus.
Do you want me to name 2, 3, and 4, or do you want me to name?
Yeah, give your 2, 3, 4. I think that's the best way to go. I think.
Okay. Look at it. at 2, I picked JJ Delaney, 9 All-Ireland, 7 All-Stars. I think his versatility was massive, but I think his ability to pluck the ball out of the sky with hurleys flying around him was, I just seen him catch so many balls, incredible. And I think to go back in, and when Noel Hickey finished up the role he played in Kilkenny's dominance, that hook and Seamus Callan from fullback in 14 was an incredible piece of skill. I tell you, he was a serious warrior. You'd want him on your team all the time. So I went for JJ because I have a fairly packed half backline. So I put him back in the corner. For fullback, I went for Brian Lohan. I think when I leave in the Gaelic grounds in '93 and tip after giving Clare a fair pace, and I think Brian was playing cornerback that day, Dalo, I couldn't have envisaged the journey he would have went on afterwards. I know he was only 19 or whatever, but I just think the way he was just a ferocious animal on the edge of the square. I think he set the tone for Clare. He had a lot of good players around him. As Dalo probably smiled when I say that, but he certainly had a lot of good defenders outside him. But to me, he was the man that set the tone for that Clare team. And I think the way he attacked the ball, I think he no different, no more than Donald changed maybe in the goalkeeper. I think Brian Lohan really was an outstanding hurling fullback and set up attack after attack. And I think we've been blessed with some savage number 3s, and Pat Hartigan has 5 All-Stars in a row. But to me, Lohan stands head and shoulders above the rest of them in my view. And finally, I went for Brian Corcoran, Anthony, a good Corkman. Again, I think I think this guy, what he done originally, I think I seen him as a minor, and the way he could read the game, the way he could move, the way he could cover ground. He always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Very, very incredible striker. But he's reading of the game, and like when he finished in 2001 and came back in 2004 up in the full forward line, I think that forward line needed leadership. And by God, he gave it to them in spades. And I think he was instrumental in winning the back-to-back titles in 2000 and in those years. So I think he was the one that for me completed the full backline, because again, I know he didn't play there, but he was an outstanding defender that I couldn't simply leave out of the 6 backs when I'm picking him. So to start the ball rolling, they're my 3: JJ, Brian Lohan, and Brian Corcoran. So whoever wants can take it on after that.
Go on, I'll go. I'm in the company of 2 successful managers, so I think I'm going to be the whipping boy here. I'm going to be told to sit back in the corner. So I actually had to look at my phone because I picked 3 teams and did 2 fitness tests and everything, and only these 3 lads made it for me. But I'll just say that Brian Corcoran appears in my team somewhere. So I would have agreed with Liam with JJ Delaney. I think I agree that the thing about JJ, I'd say you could put him anywhere in the field. Tommy Walsh, Jesus, the man was just an absolute joy to watch. What a hurler! You talk about defenders, you talk about fellas that might be just good, solid defenders. This man could hurl. He had every skill in the game. Aerially, on the ground, he's marking every style of player. So just to keep it short and sweet, I go there. I actually went with Pat Hartigan. So growing up in Limerick, I suppose, with my family and being a Liberties man, I kind of would have, heard a lot about it, watch him and, clips of him and stuff, and been showing them as well. And to have 5 in a row at full back was just an absolute immense achievement. It would have been a tough one for me between Brian Lohan as well. I just don't like Clare because of 95 and 97 when my 2 uncles were playing, and 2013 when I was playing. There's just that jersey just doesn't appeal to me at all. So I tried to minimise their influence in the feckin' team. Yeah, you won't hear much. So they're the 3 years that I'd like to forget a bit. But yeah, listen, Brian Lohan was Jesus Christ. I would have seen him play, not obviously seen Pat Hartigan live, but Jesus, what a man, what an absolute animal. And he was honest to God 51-49 for me in that one. And the last one for me is a little bit out there, I presume, but I went with Sean Finn. This Limerick team at the moment are just going from strength to strength, and I just see him potentially as one of the best defenders I've ever seen. He has marked every kind of player, standing up in the stands this year, watching him playing last year as well. He has just reads the game. He's so intelligent. I think he's a defender's defender. He's just selfless. He is an absolute bull of a man. He is so intelligent. He gets the touch in when the ball is just about to arrive. When you think he's burnt for pace, he gets back, he cuts it off. I think he's going to he could potentially end up with 5, 6, 7. I know he got 3 or 4 in a row already nominated again for Hurler of the Year this year, from cornerback, which I'm delighted to see because he deserves every bit of it. So I just felt I had to put him in there. And I think if we have this conversation in 5 years' time, we could have a lot more Limerick players up for grabs in this one, But I just think for me, he's just playing so well at the moment that if he continues to do what he's doing, I think this guy could become one of the greats, if not the greatest, to play in that position. So for me, it was JJ, Pat Hartigan, and Sean Finn.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Antwit would, but I'm more inclined to agree with Liam on this line, I'm afraid. But I do think there's a danger that we forget how great this Limerick team is already, with the 3 All-Irelands out of 4 years, and maybe some of the lads from 71, 72, 73 as well could be kind of, there'll be a chunk in the middle. But for me, Delaney has to be in any defence, obviously. I would say he would play cornerback, no bother for you. Obviously, was probably the best 7 I saw, I would think. I've Brian Corcoran in the other corner. I thought he started off there as young hurler of the year there. Superb defender, was a great full forward as well. And I just, to keep it the way I have it, and I thought there was no bigger influence on Clare coming to the fore and being big contenders in the 90s for that period. But for me, with Brian Lohan, to be able to be still cleaning out Brian Corcoran in the 2005 All-Ireland semi-final, and when Liam mentions 1993, starting off there, the longevity of him, and went on, played a great game again in the 06 semi-final. I happened to be a manager of those teams, and to see his levels, and he drove Clare for so long, I think, along with Shawnee, and I didn't pick Shawnee, but I'm agreeing with Liam. 4 positions out of 4 already. I can't believe this, Chile.
Well, that'll change quickly.
So yeah, I would go for your 3 as you have them. I think I agree with Jan. Sure, Hartigan, I just about saw him. Sully was a great fullback. God, The Rock, and I agree with you. I'm Jackie Turl.
Yeah.
Mick Kavanagh. So many greats. And I think Finn. I absolutely think Finn is on the way to be one of the calmness, the coolness of him. He seems like a fella that it doesn't really trouble him too much on these big days, and yet he can deliver the way he has delivered for Limerick. So yeah, there is a little danger, I think, maybe doubt the field as well, that Cian Lynch should be in the big time in the conversation. But
they're the two for me, Dale, that I would have picked so far that would have had an influence in the game, Sean Finn and Cian Lynch. And I don't want to have Cian Lynch in either, and I think it's unfair that it's just the way the year has happened. I think, as I said, if we had this in a couple of years' time, there would be a plethora of Limerick players deciding it, And look, so before I changed my team, I had your full backline. You know what I mean? But then I sat back and I had a look at it and I said, Jesus Christ, like Sean Finn has to get in. I just think that he's saying, but I've absolutely no issue with going with your full backline, as I said, because I had it. That was actually my first team on paper. I had Pat Hartigan was just getting in instead of Lohan in. And it was just, but we could sit here for the next 3, as you said there earlier, Dale, we could sit here for days and have conversations about each one of these players. But that's why I put in Sean. I just think in a few years' time, I think he's going to have more All-Stars than any defender, up there.
Yeah, I think the point you made is that if he continues, and I think all 3 of us are in violent agreement that he will continue. I suppose you're trying to pitch a fella that has 4 years in against players that have 10, 15 years. It's hard to map them, but I would say you're right, and it won't be just Sean Finn and Cian Lynch. This Limerick team, I'd say, are they're just raising the bar to new heights, and have no intention of stopping by looking in from the outside on them. So I think it's just a timing thing for someone like Sean Finn. And Cian Lynch didn't make my team either for similar, but if you're picking a team for the last 10 years, the last 5 years, they'd be all over it. But it's just that they're probably in the early stages of what looks like being a really, really fruitful career.
I was even down the pub. One of my regulars there Monday. He likes now beer of a Monday, so I open early on a Monday. But McShay said, "You're telling me you're picking this team and no Fan Larkin inside it, so that'll tell you about generations, And I was only googling then fan stuff. I remember him well, sure, from going to those matches in the 70s, being brought along. Luckily, and we've all alluded to that. I suppose been brought along to those games. We've seen so many of these guys, but sure, look, it's impossible. So I don't know. Are we agreed on our 3? Is that the way we're doing this?
I think I'm outnumbered. I think this is going to be a kind of a turn for this thing. I'll just sit down. As I said, I'm the only non-manager here. Unless you consider B hurling in schools counting. But I think I leave it to the 2 successful managers. But I just had to put my argument up for Pat Hartigan 5 in a row. I thought it was, at the time was incredible. And for sure,
we didn't even mention Dahi Burke. He won 4 in a row.
Jesus,
yeah. So there you go.
And even Kevin King. We have been blessed.
Oh God, yeah.
And in fullbacks. But it's hard to look. Look, as you said, Partigan was the closest of, and and Jackie Turtle is someone I had huge admiration for.
Yeah.
Just thought he really set the tone again for that Kilkenny team in the corner. And never forget his point in the 2009 All-Ireland final when we stuck in for air. But look, a lot of good players. But I think maybe this time, Anthony, you might give us a rub, but he'd probably get it back before we get to the corner forward.
I don't think so, but I'm enjoying the conversation.
Oh, you will. Go on, we move out, will we?
Yeah.
Go on then. Throw out your half back line. So
well, see, this is where I kind of made up for Brian Corcoran, the full back line. I actually named him at number 6 for unfortunately for Liam's man's demise. Like, I know Paddy Maher. Listen, I played against Paddy Maher plenty of times. I know how good Paddy Maher is. Unfortunately, I've been at the receiving end of him. He's paw too many times for my puckouts, and receiving end of my manager's tongued in because of it. But he's a sensational player. But like, the thing about Brian Corcoran for me, like, was that I joined the panel in 2006, and Brian, I suppose, emotionally in a way, he was the first guy to shake my hand to welcome me to panel. What an absolute gent. But what he did at full forward for that team, what he did at cornerback originally, and what he did at centre back then in '99. And remember how many years he missed out in the meantime then, that how many more All-Stars would he have had if he'd have continued on to play. So I was thinking, like, your centre back, your leader, your man that's going to absolutely drive on a team. I just went with Brian Corcoran at centre back. I just thought I just think he's one of the most natural hurlers I've ever seen watching growing up. And the thing I wanted to get in there, you've been talking about being dragged down to see Fan Larkin play. I was dragged down to see Daly play, like, so that's my age compared to him now, lads, before I get that in. And the winged in.
Well, look at this, obviously. Go on.
No, go on.
Go on. Are we agreed on the 2 wingmen? I'd say we nearly are we?
The thing about Tommy, Tommy could have made this team anywhere, lads. Jesus Christ, he's absolutely awesome. And look, there's no point in speaking about the other man, how good a hurler he was.
Yeah, but look, Tommy Walsh and Brian Whelan, that's here on all of the teams, are they?
Yeah. Look, I put Brian over to 7, like, but I just think Whelan obviously we're going up full forward in '98, could play anywhere as well. So it's such a trait of all these guys, isn't it? How Brian Corcoran, like JJ, and Lohan, all right, probably was a full back, and that was it. Maybe he disagreed with me, but we're all agreed on the 2 wing backs. So there'll be Tommy Walsh and Brian Whelan. So we're making a bit of progress. Lads, I went for Kieran Carey at centre back. I just think if it's the best team, like JJ with Brian Corcoran, I for me in the 50 years, Carey, it's just a huge. I mean, to not win in All-Ireland was a travesty in one way. He was that good, and they were very, very unlucky, as you said, into it. 94, 96 especially. And I just thought he was the man on that team, and he again would have marked him in county under 21 at centre forward. He could play anywhere. He could play midfield. He could play wing forward. But what a player for me! And he was the guy I plumped for at 6.
Yeah, and look, I went for a look at him. Probably, there is an element probably of
my gone there, lads,
of heart and head in this one. But like Paddy Maher for me, has had an incredible innings with Tip. I suppose I got my hands on him as a young lad, as a minor in 2006 when he was given the job of going in marking Joe Canning. When he was actually he had another year left underneath him. Joe was going for either 3 or 4 in a row minor All-Irelands. Paddy went in and done an incredible job on him on the edge of the square, and we won the match. And obviously that 2006 All-Ireland win was a big catalyst for what them boys went on to achieve afterwards. And in 2009 we played a league final in Thurles against Kilkenny. They'd beaten us cricket score down in Nolan Park about 3 or 4 weeks earlier, and Paddy was stepped in centre back on Henry. And for the first time ever, I think gave Henry his most uncomfortable period in a long time. And he was only a young lad of 20 years of age, snapping ball out of the sky. Went in and played full back in the All-Ireland final in '09. Incredible job. Went out to the wing in 10 after the Cork boys had given him a torrid time at the edge of the square, but went to 7 and really was incredible in that All-Ireland final. And I just think I think he's been on the pitch. He's never off the pitch, really. I think he's himself and Joe had a clash up in Croke Park with the stands shaking, and he's just a warrior, and he's still doing it with his club again last Sunday.
County final again.
Yeah, and back in another county final, and he just bossed the edge of the square. And even watching him watching him last year, he was on Seamus Flanagan and he was on a really good player. And I thought the way Paddy played in the day, like he had a catch there in the second half that to me was just outstanding. So look,
I love Sean. I hate saying this as again referring back to 95 and 97, but I love watching Seanie McMahon play. I thought just such a fantastic hurler, beautiful stylist. Like I thought his free taking in as well was absolutely exceptional, and he looked class with the Cooper helmet and everything was going for him. Like, he's just a beautiful, beautiful hurler. Like, so, look, Liam, as you said earlier, my 6 before Brian Corcoran was Paddy Maher. I think, look, as you said, look, I mightn't have seen him that much at 6. Like you, I think it'd be hard to pick a 6 without him, 6 backs without him. Again, if I was to pick him, you could put these players anywhere, and that's what we're saying. But if I was going for anyone outside of Brian Corcoran, number 6, I had to, fair is fair. And I loved Kieran Carey growing up, lads. Jesus, like, that was the team I supported. I was growing up in Brian Corcoran. I was watching Limerick and Kieran Carey, and that point soloing down the field. And as you referred to Jackie Tyrrell there a minute ago, there, Dale, with his tongue hanging out, or and next to Kieran without the catch, like, and over the bar, and Jesus, like, immense. And I was one of the kids inside the stand jumping and leaping like a clown, like, But again, look, I had Paddy in, and at the very last second I took him out for Brian. So look, to be fair,
yeah, well, I would if I had to pick it out now 6 lads, it'd be Seanie for me. But I just with the way we're including lads, I thought Carey would have to be in there. So he did play a lot of his best hurling at 6, so that's why I went for him. Paddy, savage admiration for Paddy, like, just gas man as well as everything else. Had him with the old Railway Cup there, and good character, like, good guy. He's top guy around the place, and brilliant hurler, like a magnet for high ball. And look, if that's the way we're going to go with it, we'll go on 2 votes.
If we're picking the best 6, we're going for Seanie McMahon, and if we're just picking the defenders for position as Paddy Maher, is that basically the agreement?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and I'd still nearly be. I'd be tempted to make a switch in for Carey at midfield. But anyway, go on.
Well, yeah, we can come to that. But I think if we agree then that we give Paddy, and maybe that opens up an opportunity in the middle of the field.
Okay, so they're the goalie in the back says going well. And there'll be a few forwards, nearly have to be automatics. So there'll still be fun. Midfield, lads, we kind of, John Fenton was a definite for me. He kind of captured my imagination growing up, and got the great pleasure of being on the field just a few minutes in a Munster club game with Middleton and Clarecastle. And just to say you played on the field as he might, for me, he was just an icon. And the goal still go down as the greatest. Maybe Jimmy Barry's would be an argument, the flicked one and that was a ball in from Fenton as well. So for me, I had John Fenton, lads. That's a definite for me at midfield.
Well, I'll back that up, because we'll keep the Cork lad to have his own view in, and because we are talking about a Cork player here, so we probably won't get much resistance, Dale, I reckon, when we go to Anthony. But 5 consecutive All-Stars from 83 to 87. I was in Thurles that day in 87 for that goal. I'll never forget it. It was a flick. The way he flicked the ball ahead and he just met it as sweet as a nut. He was actually on one leg. Every ounce of power went into the ball, and it was actually, I was watching the program, Jimmy Barry Murphy was speaking about it, and he was saying about Dennis Conroy, the Cork chairman. He was walking across the field and he met this irate supporter to say that he wasn't happy with his tickets, that he was so far away from the action he never got to see John Fenton's goal. And Dennis Conroy replied, well, he said, don't worry about it, he said, because Tommy Quaid didn't see it either. The late great Tommy Quaid. And when Tommy Quaid didn't see going into the net, that tells you all you need to know, because he was some keeper. But he get my vote as well. Just his free taking, everything, outstanding midfielder. So Anthony, have you anything that you want to question?
Not a bit. I would agree as well. And I think that goal, you kind of summed it up there, Liam, by mentioning like who he scored it past. Putting it past Tommy Quaid, like, Jesus Christ, he was another goalie that I would have idolised growing up as well. Like, I just think he's striking, as you mentioned there, like, not only the goal, the ball in for Jimmy's, I think his wrists were just magical, like, beautiful hurler, middle of the field, kind of you know, I kind of looked at a midfielder like him, Tommy Dunn, you know, even like kind of the wristy hurler, the beautiful striker, you know, fantastic player. You know, and for me, he was an obvious choice for me as well. Yeah, so no argument from this side.
So way back, a club mate of mine, he used to be my teacher, John Henley, and he was the county chairman, so he'd a vote, and he was late for the Clare team being picked in the late 60s. And the great Tom Mack, he's still alive in Crusheen. He was a great. He said, Henley said, well, have a look at it now, Henley. You were late. He said, so we picked it. So take it. Oh yeah. I'd agree with it all. He says, bar one. And the great Tom said, hadn't our Lord himself only to pick 12? And he made a bollocks of it with one of them. So if we only get one or two we don't agree with, it'll be all right. Yeah. Who'd you go with John Fenton, lads?
Well, I went with a bit of a.
What are the suggestions for midfield with John?
Yeah, I went with a bit of a bolter, someone that I had massive admiration for when I watched him growing up. Frank Cummins, Kilkenny. One of the hardest men I've ever seen to play in the middle of the park. My abiding memory is Frank gets the ball, pulls it out of the sky, and there's just bodies just seem to fly everywhere off him. He was just to me, he'd be a great compliment to John Fenton. One really hardy man and one pure stick man. You know, I suppose, look, he played from 66 to 85, so he had some innings. And he also, you know, he won 8 All-Irelands and 4 All-Stars, but also he went to Cork. He actually played his club hurling for a finish in Blackrock, Anthony, and I think he won 3 All-Ireland. He won 3 All-Ireland titles with them. So look, I think he was massive. I thought he was gold standard in the middle of the field. He is probably of the earlier era, but as I said, my abiding memory is him catching the ball, and he could catch a ball. And I think playing midfield to give that length of career, I thought was exceptional. He was a top class hurler. So yeah, I just probably was trying to compliment one hardy boy with one really class sticks man. So that I went with Frank Cummins.
With Galway being, you know, our neighbours here, and we didn't probably think we'd get success. We always had a draw maybe for the Galway boys, and they were in Connacht as well, so we didn't really get to meet them and to get beaten by them as often as we were by the other Munster counties. So for me, there was just 3 great Galway men in the reckoning for this, 3 JCs. And yeah. I didn't go for Joe Cooney, and I went for the other 2. And John Connolly for me was someone I idolised growing up, you know, as being a kind of a semi-Galway supporter when the Clare lads had been gone. And then, and like, you know, he eventually got his All-Ireland, obviously, in 80. But, you know, I probably was past his best nearly by the time he got it. But for me, he was ultimate. I think very similar to your argument, Liam, you know, and that came from way back in the 60s. And yes, the longevity and would be a great foil for Fenton as well. Yeah. Now, I would also consider the Kerry angle on this, though, you know, that's...
Yeah,
you know, and those are look loads. I mean, off your team, geez, Brendan and the likes, you know, Sue Mick Finlay, you know, fellas like that. You know, even our own couple, Baker and Lynch, like he's, you know, mighty men, and loads more. Like I'm leaving out loads of great lads, you know. So I just thought John Connolly for me was somebody I don't know. I would have him on nearly any era team as maybe the best ever Galway man for me, and probably didn't get, you know, because of the later teams being getting more adulation and obviously Kenning being so special. But that's the way I went on it.
Yeah, I kind of, maybe it's just a generational thing for me, but I actually went with Michael Finlay. I actually went to college with him, played with him, Fiskgiven hurling and stuff, and I just thought that like his partnerships throughout Kilkenny, he was always the one fella that was the consistent, like was, you know, that was the guy that you went onto the field. Big, strong, rangy hurler, well able to mix it, but like what a lovely stick man as well. Like, you know, for a guy of his size, ended up centre back for Ballyhale Shamrocks as well. I just think like that, you know, I thought he just made, obviously Shefflin and the lads would have done the job, but geez, Mike in the middle of the field was just absolutely phenomenal for me. Again, maybe it was just having talked out with him and played with him and, you know, gotten to know him. I just think he's an absolutely colossal of a man. And like, I know playing against him when going onto the field, like, you know, you're kind of looking to see where he was for your puckouts, because if you dropped one short, he was not sure, but it was being plucked, you know, and beaten back up to you. Like, so I kind of went to that. I thought, like Liam was saying, I thought one big, strong, you know, well able to hurl as well, man in the middle of the field with John Fenton was the reason that I went for that as well. And the fact that I suppose I said I was lucky enough, like Liam was mentioning earlier, having lads in the dressing room and stuff, and knowing kind of a guy. I saw him from freshers hurling all the way up, and I remember Frank Flannery was actually coaching us in the fresher team, and he turned around to me one day and he goes, "This fella is going to be some hurler." and how right he was, and he was just from those early days, you could see it, like, and he filled out. So for me, look, it's again, like, even all positions open for debate. Kieran Carey, as I said earlier, Dale, I idolised growing up. I just thought what he did for Limerick in midfield and at centre back as well. But that's why, look, I just went with Fenno. I just thought he was just awesome. I thought he was a guy that you had 14 other All-Stars around him, whatever, like, all the time. But I just thought consistently, and carrying injuries towards the end of his career, he still put in huge performances, like, for the club and county.
Yeah, I will say on that end, I think he was the best I managed against in midfield. Jesus, he when I was with the Dubs there with Kenny, he was just, and he was only breaking on when I was starting, but he went on then the 6 years I was with Dublin. Jesus, he was better and better. He was getting, like, he was an awful hard one to break down. It's a hard one to call, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is, because as you said, you've Kieran Carey coming into the mix. You have, we've mentioned Frank Cummins, we mentioned John Connolly, we mentioned Michael Fennelly, and I, like you, Dale, I had Joe Cooney in and then I had him out, and I found it really hard to leave off Joe Cooney off the team. So if I was bringing one up from the other end to bring in with Kieran Carey, it's probably Joe Cooney I'd be bringing in. But look at, as I said, someone has to get the nod. So.
And I, like you, Liam, was Frank. It was Cummins for me. That was the one that I had just. It was between Fennelly and Cummins for me, like, and even the connection with the Blackrock thing and all that as well. Like, I just thought he was the one guy as well. So if you're kind of throwing all the extra bodies into the middle of the field now, like, that was the one. So it was between Fennelly and him for me with Fenton. But as I said, I'm open for any debate there.
Yeah, I was a huge admirer of Frank Cummins. My brother Michael, my eldest brother, he had idolised him, and the clashes with the likes of the Joachim Kellys and who from Galway, Steve Mahan. God, the clashes with those guys were just incredible. I wouldn't have a major, point. I thought Carey would have to be there, both Frank Cummins, John Fenton, as good as you'll get.
Well, you call it, boys. I probably made the case for Porrick. So whatever one you feel is appropriate to get the nod for the middle of the park. I think they're all reputable candidates.
I go with Cummins, especially, and I know your point with Fenno, definitely, but I think you also wouldn't have said you were very near Frank Cummins.
No, that's it, and that was it for me. Like, I would have seen a lot more of Fenno. I would have played with him, played against him. The experience of having him on the field would have been the kind of a fear factor for me against him and stuff like that. You're able probably better to kind of cross-generationalise with them, and have a better look at the two of them. You've coached against Fennelly, you've watched Frank Cummins and stuff like that, but I'd have no qualms whatsoever. Like, but I just wanted to put the case. Like, again, we're going back to it again, lads. Jesus Christ, we could put the case for everyone on the list.
Outstanding.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm happy enough to go with that with you, lads. Yeah, it's just as you said, Daly. We'll have to get Kieran into corner forward, a full forward at some stage or something like that.
we're running out now, and we're running out.
You're going to have some job getting him into the half forward line, I'll tell you that.
Oh, come here, I tell you, hey, a lot of teams don't play third midfielder with the corner forward coming out there. Do you know what I
mean? He'd be a good man for it. Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay,
right, we go with that.
Frank Cummins and John Fenton. So
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, with a half forward line, I'll throw it open there. Sure, like, for me, this was probably the easiest line I found. And maybe now it's probably the one we could end up fighting over. But to me, Joe Canning, Henry Shefflin and TJ Reid, I think they speak for themselves and what they've done in the game over the last 10 years with Henry or TJ and Joe, and obviously Henry, when he was at his peak. I just, three guys that were, as I said, I found it really hard to leave out someone like Joe Cooney, but I just couldn't look beyond those three guys. I had Joe Canning at 10, Henry at 11, and TJ at 12.
Yeah, big shout for me. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think I'm on the same wavelength. Like, you could have, but if I didn't have him centre back or midfield, I'd be kind of saying, look, I would go with the three. A big shout, Joe Cooney as well, huge one. Jesus, how good was he? Ken McGrath could be in the argument for up there as well. Superb. James O'Connor would have said, top class. Likes of a Ben O'Connor, super player. So many we could have, but I think those three just have to be there. I probably disagree with you on the inside line a bit, but I think those three have to be there.
Yeah, the only difference I had at one stage is I had Joe Canning inside for a while. where I hated to see him play against me. But I put him back out into the half forward as well. I think that, like, again, there were 3 players that will win a game on their own. Do you know what I mean? And I think that warrants it as well. So I don't know what numbers I had him at, but I had the exact same 3 as you. I said the only change I had was I had Joe on side for a while and I DJ out. But yeah, 100%. Short and sweet.
Nice and easy. Nice and easy.
Yeah.
That just tells you the caliber of the player we're talking about. Like, I mean, like, because when you look at the quality, oh my God, the quality of the forwards we've had in this game for the last 50 years is just incredible. And to think that those 3 guys that they've got, the 9 votes really. I think it just tells you about where they've been and what they've done in the game over the last 20 years. So it's fantastic. But as I said, blessed to have. Unfortunately, they broke my heart more so than. But when you can look back and actually see them, even Joe's point in 17 to win the match again, Tip, and Henry's 1-1 in the 09 final when we nearly looked like we were going to get across the line, that point from 100 yards. And I thought Henry's second half performance in the 12 All-Ireland to bring it to a replay was just incredible.
Can I ask a question though? Do you know the way Dalo used to there a while ago? We're using the selectors thing. Just on, like, Henry Shefflin centre forward, I think is fair enough, and TJ Reader. But if you had Joe Canning to pick, would any of us pick him at 10?
Yeah, that's There's it. Look at you could have picked DJ at 10 and swap him that
was
way.
My thing. I just hated seeing Joe close to goal. And I know later on in his career they moved him out to centre forward and middle of the field. Even he's such a good hurler, but I just think you mentioned it there earlier about the All-Star thing, but Jesus Christ, when Joe is coming around the edge of the square there, like, he was so good in the air. Myself
and Liam just couldn't give an all kick Kenny a half forward line. We just couldn't get it. They have enough on it.
And a fair mention to a centre forward and Tony Kelly as well. They wouldn't even mention.
That's it.
And Cian Lynch.
And you could go back to the Cork 3 in a row team, the fellas like Timmy Crowley, Ger McCarthy, the 3 in a row team in the 70s, like back to the great Tip team as well, like, fellas there, geez, the Galway, like Joe Cooney, lads. Joe Cooney's display in the first half in 1990 on Jim Catchman. And Cork had still the gumption to leave Jim Catchman, who came out at a great. But that was for me. We mentioned Joe Kenning's second half display in the 12 drawn game, which was unreal. But like Joe Cooney's first half that day, it was a thing of amazement. Like, and as a Clareman standing there watching it, I was there like, they'll have to take off Jim Catchman. But good old Cork, backing of their own lads, they stuck by their man, and he came out and played well. But yeah, there's been some. But I think. You said it, Liam. The measure of these 3 guys, they just have to be there.
Yeah, no,
Johnny Leahy, Declan Ryan, Jenny Mack,
Michael Sherry. They were serious half forward.
Unreal.
Like, again, in a couple of years' time, the only fellow I could ever see breaking into that and moving one of them is Cian Lynch at centre forward. Like, I just think that in about 5 years' time, as you said there, Limerick will keep doing what they're doing. What he's done last year.
Garrod Hegarty is on a mission too.
It's crazy. Like,
and Tom Morrissey, not too dull either. No, Jesus.
No,
it's just But as I said, he was the one guy I toyed with. You could have had an uncle nephew midfield as well, Dalo Kieran himself. But he's just one guy. I think that if he keeps producing, he's just a magician, and he's the only fella I could ever see breaking into that half forward and then forcing someone to move one of those boys out there, But
as Liam said at the get go, like, we could pick a 15 that I'd say would force a draw with this 15. That's a fact. I had DJ full, like, I don't know whether you have in corner or full or what.
I had him corner
as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with it, but I just put him full. I thought he was another for Anthony. A lot of goalies in the 90s and early 2000s would have liked to see out in the wing as well, And when Kerry got that ball, he was nothing else in his mind, only a green flag. So you'd have to have him there.
He was class, lads. He was one guy like that. I went out to my grandmother's house there one day, and my uncles were showing me they'd all jerseys inside, like, and they'd swapped the jersey, and I think Declan or Mick would have swapped with DJ Carey, and it was the first time ever in my life I thought I was going to steal from my family, like, you know what I mean? I wanted to whip the jersey and run out the door, like, to see, like, DJ's jersey, but the point after Hurling in the wing against Clare, I know it's against Clare, no Dale, sorry, like, but
still,
he's what a hurler, lads. my good God, he was just, oh Jesus, he was a guy that I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I'd had him in the corner. I'm going to get out of your way here because I think this is where the fun could begin between the three of us, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I named an ex-manager of mine at full forward in JBM, Jimmy Barry Murphy. I just think any All-Star team that's been named over the last 50 years cannot go without him being on it, in my opinion. Like, I think what he's done as a person, a hurler, a footballer, Jesus Christ, everything, you know. He was just an absolute legend of the game, you know, and we referred to his goal there earlier, like, you know, he was just such a guy. Like, and growing up in Cork, like, whether you were young enough or old enough, and I can guarantee if you go across to everyone's father or grandfather is showing them Jimmy Barry Murphy videos, you know, and for me, I had Jimmy named the full forward, and I just think, listen, as I said, if you're naming any All-Star team, in my opinion, he'd have to be there.
Well, look, I'll rock in behind you because I picked Jimmy as well. Definitely one of the most skillful and gifted players I've ever seen. You know, I think he's 10 Munster medals, which I think is record equaling. I think to see what he did in hurling and at the same time was able to operate in the football as well. I mean, obviously getting the 5 hurling All-Stars and 2 for football. You know, and like that goal in '83, as you said, that John Fenton put in. And like I tell you, he was going into full backlines and he was going in with no helmet on, and I was saying to myself, how is this man going to survive? You know, against that Wexford full backline in the 80s, like there's Hell's Kitchen, my God, they take skins off you. But his touch was so good and he was so elusive that he was able to cope with hurleys flying all around him, because to me he was gifted and no helmet on. But you know, he got the nod from me as well. He needed to be as skillful as he was, but like the rare talent we have here for 2 places is just ridiculous, ridiculously good. So look, I picked him as well, but it's close call, you know.
Yeah, well, if two year picking him is in, so I'd probably say I picked him as well. But I'll be honest, Jimmy, I didn't have you in. I'll meet you at the course in Clonmel now, and you can give out to me. But I didn't like. I kind of picked 7 that I thought were the closest. And I said, how am I going to get 3 from 7 here? Like,
yeah,
you could have included maybe Joe Canning and shifted around with DJ outside. But the 7 I picked, lads, and I'll tell you the 7 that I kind of narrowed it down to were the 4 I left out were Patrick Horgan. Has been an amazing player, absolutely, and still doing it, and hopefully he gets off with that suspension as well for the Glen. I think we get to see him again the weekend. I thought John Mullane was electric for a lot of years. You know, I don't know, what is he, 5 All-Stars, but he was a great player, great character. Jimmy, iconic, absolutely iconic guy. You know, everyone's hero at my age anyway, and you know, growing up, Jimmy Barry, JBM, like just a legend. Owen Kelly. And they're the 4 I left out, lads. And Owen Kelly, for me, you know, what the purity of him and just Kell, like brilliant guy as well. You know, guy great time for. And the 2 I went for with DJ were Eddie Kerr. I think just is one of the greats. I think, and I would have had him there. And the other one ended for growing up and again got to play against him, and I didn't even mention Pat Fox here. I was nearly the toughest guy I marked when I played cornerback. It was great finisher, really tough guy as well. You know, you never got anything soft off him. For me, Nicky was somebody I thought was, you know, with Babs' team when they came along, and I saw him playing under 21 as well, and he was a star. I thought, when, you know, he came up with some magic moments, and I thought for me I couldn't leave out Nicky, so I went with Eddie Kerr and Nicky either side of DJ. But look, I know you'll probably differ on that with me, but you're bored with Jimmy at the edge of the square, so I'm not going to argue with that either. So a 2 year for Jimmy, I'm for Jimmy as well then, you know, because as I said, I couldn't really separate the 7 of them, to be honest, and you could have put Kenning inside as well. You could also put Reid and Shefflin inside, as we all know, and even Eddie Brennan's in this world. I mean, jeez, like how many great ones are we leaving out here, you know? But I'd go so DJ and Connor. I go with you with Jimmy full.
Okay, and look at it like there's going to be some activity for this final corner then, because you know, I was looking at you know, I probably had the tip classes on initially, and like I probably came down. There was 3. I found it really hard to leave Eddie off. I'll be honest with you. I think he was a legend. But I mean, something has to give, and I probably came down like, Nicky and Owen were probably the two that I was going head to head on. But like I wasn't ruling out Shane. Like Shamie Callan has done incredible things. Like to me, he didn't get hurled here in 16, and I think unfairly so. I think he should have got hurled here in 16. He didn't get it. He got it in 19. He got a goal in every game, and I think, I think he got, was it 3-6 or 3-9 again Galway in the Ireland semi-final, and ended up on the losing team. I think it was 3-6. They simply couldn't handle him. So, but I probably I did side with Owen. I gave Owen the nod again, and as you said, Dalo, like Nicky, like he was just that icon in Tipperary hurling, and was just incredible. Like that inside forward line of Nicky and Pat Fox and Bonner, like was some combination coming at you. And like I think what they did the late 80s and the early 90s for Tip was just incredible. But I couldn't look beyond Owen. I think his goal against Cork in 2008 when we were sucking for air down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, he was on, Brian Murphy was one of the best defenders in the game, and he managed to get just that inch of space to hang it up at the back of the net. He had the best wrist I've ever seen. His performance in the 2009 All-Ireland, when he couldn't train in the mornings, he was getting injections in his back, and he went up into Jackie Turle and JJ Delaney and gave massive leadership. So look, some of it is probably, there's a heartstrings pull here, because we got, obviously he was my captain winning that Ireland in 2010, and naturally I'm going to say he's probably going to have a little bit more of an emotional connection to Owen's selection than others. But I appreciate the treacherous condition we find ourselves in when we have Nicky English, Shamie Callan, Patrick Horgan, John Mullane, Eddie Kerr, Owen Kelly, all fighting for the one position. So I tell you what, there's you could throw there's so many permutations here, but I don't know. Look, as I said, Owen gets my vote, but I appreciate the treachery, the treacherous selection that we have to try and pick here.
And I, like you, Liam, I went obviously with the Cork one. It was actually, for me, out of the ones, like I'm not even going to list the names that you've listed, because I'm only going to repeat them. But the two that I finally decided upon were Owen Kelly and Patrick Horgan. Owen Kelly was one of the most beautiful, stylish hurlers from a young fella. And I'll never forget in 2001, when Tip won the Ireland, wasn't it, one, and we won the minor. We went up the steps into Burlington, and we were all young fellas. I was only 16, and next thing, Jesus Christ, Owen Kelly was a god to us, because what he'd done that year. And he went up to his bedroom and brought down 4 or 5 pairs of shorts and gave it to us. So, I was for me, he should have been inside the victorious ballroom, and here he's inside the young fellas from Cork handing out shots. And geez, I still had him, at home in the mother's house. It was just massive to me, but even little things like that off the field. But I played against him, one of the biggest moments is the compliment to him. I came on in 12 and Don Lowe got injured in the league quarter final. He went for goal from a free and I saved it. And lads, my heart started pounding that I'd saved the free from Owen Kelly, but like Liam, I suppose heartstrings and friendships, and we alluded to All-Ireland winners winning All-Irelands. When Patrick Horgan decides to hang up his boots, I think his stock is going to go through to another level. You talk about Shamie Callan getting 3-6. We lost to Kilkenny in All-Ireland quarter-final, the man got 3-10. And he beat Kilkenny all on his own. What he can do with a ball, unfortunately, I've seen in training. He broke my hurley before the All-Ireland semi-final in 2017. I was like, if anybody knows me, my hurleys mean the world to me. Before we played Waterford, he broke it with a penalty. He hit it so hard, and the ball still went in. But what that man can't do with a ball, I think when Henry Shefflin spoke about him, he said he can make a ball talk. He's going to become the top scorer in the J of all time next season. Joe Canning got it this year. I think Hoggy's only a couple of points behind him, and that man, we spoke about, and I just looked at it, and the thing I put him in is I couldn't put TJ Reid or Joe Canning ahead of Patrick Horgan without having Patrick Horgan in the team. They're the three of the greatest forwards I've seen in the last, that are still playing, and whether Joe plays again is up for thing. But it was, honest to God, like the other one earlier for me between Fat Hartigan and Brian Lohan, is 51-49. I think two of the most stylish and similar players in ways, Liam, with their wrists and everything. For me, I just went with Hoggy. It's probably the friendship, it's probably the teammate thing, it's probably everything. But I can fully appreciate where Owen Kelly and Nicky and are coming as well, and Eddie, I wouldn't have had obviously seen as much of. But for me, I just went with Hoggy because of, as I said, when he's done and his boots are hung up, people will put him up in another pedestal again, I think.
Dalo, so I think we'll have to give you the casting vote here, Dalo.
Well, we have DJ JBM, right? And it's one corner, and we're Nicky English, Owen Kelly, and Patrick Horgan. If I can, that's what I'm summing it up, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't know why I have to cast them both. But you're for a tip man, you're for a Cork man, and I'm a Clare man. So is that it?
Yeah. Well, you some element of we're emotionally connected to some of the parties involved.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not emotionally connected to any of them fellas. Reckon me on the field and reckon me on the sideline. I was looking in. So, oh Jesus, geez, lads, I go with English. I just think English was too big a player for too long. Now, how long is Kelly and how long is Hoggy shirt is? And like the older brigade shooters, lads, for having to pick an all 50-year team without any care.
I know.
But look, impossible. But if I was to have to be pushed, which of the three of them, I'd have to have English there, I think. Jesus, that's an impossible line to pick, But if you're giving me a casting vote, I'd go that way. But I wouldn't have argued with either of the two on the two boys. I'm big fans of Kelly and of Hoggy. Like, I'm just hoping the Glyn get him off the weekend so I can tune into the live stream and see his contribution again. It'll be immense, no doubt. Yeah, but I'd give it to Nicky.
Even seeing Owen like 38 and he still poke the ball over the quarterfinal. Like,
unreal.
Incredible.
I just love Liam when he was coming on as a sub at the end of the game. For Tipperary towards the end of his career, like the stadium announcer and for Tipperary, he'd be hardly through it, and he'd be bursting onto the field like he'd be waiting for his hamstring to blow. He'd be hamstring on. The Tipperary crowd would just erupt, how he even had a puff of air after it, and he'd be in standing and by Jesus, he was well able to bind himself.
Sure. Even when he was starting off there, and it's coming near the end of my days, I maybe only crossed over with him maybe for 1 year. Or I was a sub, I'd say, and he was coming through, and Jesus, the way he would stand up to some of our boys that had fair old reputations, he'd be hopping off from left, right, and centre.
I think the tackle. Remember the time to tackle Dalo when Ollie Baker met him and
Frank at one side,
and he actually swung out. He let the ball fly off on his back and nearly took the head off Ollie. Mm-hmm. So I think he made a statement that day to say I'm not going to be pushed around. But look, I think like any one of them. Yeah, if Patrick Horgan or Owen Kelly or Eddie Cahill were on this team, I don't think anybody would have a question mark as to they're deserving of the role. But the reality is we have 4 for 1, and if I'm happy that if Anthony says that Nicky was the one that he would pick, I can live with that decision anyway. Naturally, as I said, Owen got my pick, but that's they all can't get on. There's winners and losers, and if that is the case. There's 3 heavy losers up front, but there's some heavy losers at the back as well, and that's probably the nature of the business. So, Anthony, I don't know, have you counter?
I saw Hoggy play full back once, so I can go all the way back there. If you want for we can go back there if we want for about 10 minutes if we want. But no, I'm the same.
And Nasser, with your Limerick connections now, we've known Limerick, man, and they're now the dominant force in hurling, and great teams back along. The 73 team as well. Joe McKenna, did Joe get five All-Stars in a row as well? And I'm the only one. In fairness, you tried for Kieran. In fairness, though, but Pat Hartigan inside full back. You Sean Finn as well.
Corner back. And I was pushing the up the field.
We're just blaming the man from Porto on this
one. That's all. Throw it all on me, lads.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our team, heavily stacked with Kilkenny, but that's probably been the story.
I'd ask the lads to put an asterisk underneath it and say, all the names we argued for, and then to watch the video to make sure when the team finally goes out. When the team finally goes out, they'll think there's going to be some right showings for us.
Yeah, I got quick mention for Sparrow there while we're at it. In case I meet him at the weekend.